Hi, my name is Charles Malki, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants. And today I've got a very exciting episode, and actually several episodes that will be featuring Judy Frankel of Judy's Homegrown, where she's going to be sharing all of her expertise on growing the best plants and trees on your garden to help make this your best growing season ever. As a quick introduction, let me just share a few highlights about Judy. She's been providing tree and garden care for well over 20 years now. She's been gardening at her family farm in Pennsylvania since she was 12 years old. She's a published author, as you can find her on Amazon. She has gone through the University of California gardening program as well in 2002, and she grows over 185 varieties of fruit trees on her property. She's concerned about her food future as well, and involved on some political organizations to preserve the health and the life of our earth. And she also is a member of a variety of organizations, including the California Rare Fruit Growers, when we met about 6 months ago. And she's also a member of the Seed Library of Los Angeles, South Coast Rose Society, and many others as well. And also loves sharing a lot of excellent recipes. When you grow all these wonderful fruits and vegetables on your property, she'll tell you how to turn them into food as well, and get to maximize that enjoyment. So Judy, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Charles. Thanks for having me.
So my thought was, before we get into all these different topics and basically do all these different lessons within the garden, I basically prepared 10 questions for you to answer. And they're relatively general, but just want to see what your take is on some of these issues. And for those of you watching, I have not shared these questions with her in advance, so hopefully none of these catch you off by surprise. My first one for Judy is, what is your #1 favorite vegetable and your #1 favorite fruit tree in your garden?
My favorite vegetable has got to be tomatoes.
And hence we got the tomatoes here. I did my research and I knew she loves tomatoes, so that will be one of our main topics to follow. And how about your favorite fruit tree?
I like so many of my trees. It's like asking which child you like best, right? But I would have to say the Gold Nugget Mandarin Orange is one of my absolute faves. I couldn't live without avocados. And I have an Eva's Pride peach tree that's just wonderful. Those are my 3 favorites. That makes sense,
and I get it. It's hard to pick. I've got a variety of fruit trees in my own garden, and I value each and every one of them, and I wouldn't want just one variety of tree as being the only tree in my garden. But thank you for sharing your top 3 favorites. In regards to companion planting, and I'll define it, but the question is, what is your favorite companion plant within your garden? The companion plant is typically a plant you'll plant in your garden to help maximize the health and the life of other plants that you desire within your garden, whether it's to basically deter soil pathogens, or a beneficial plant can also deter pests such as aphids and other pests from harming your desired plants. And sometimes a companion plant could be something that will draw insects to the companion plant and to basically preserve those desired plants within your garden. For example, you might plant something that'll attract the butterflies and the caterpillars to, so that they don't end up laying eggs on your basil or your other desired plants. So you basically plant maybe a companion plant that draws those pests in a different direction within your garden. So the question again is, what is your favorite companion plant and why?
So can I do 2 on this? Because next to every tomato plant, I almost always put a basil. Basil and tomatoes they help each other grow, and who wouldn't want to have basil if you already have a tomato, because they're natural together.
They taste great together, of course.
Exactly. And then we were talking a little bit about companion plants for avoiding pests. Well, the artichoke should automatically be planted with alyssum, because otherwise you'll have aphids in your artichokes. And alyssum attracts the hoverfly, whose larvae eat the aphids. And they're beautiful, they reseed themselves easily, but they don't take over the garden, and they smell wonderful.
That's great. So, so the two companion plants you mentioned is basil for tomatoes, and then alyssum with your artichokes are excellent companion plants. Thanks for sharing that. When can I prune my fruit trees? And the second part of the same one is, when is the best time to prune my fruit trees?
Okay, so every variety is slightly different. With citrus, you should prune them in January, but you could really prune them back anytime that you feel like they're getting out of control, they're in the way, or you just want to give it a little life. Sometimes, like I had a grapefruit tree.
Yeah.
One time I just thought, I don't like this grapefruit tree. I hadn't given it long enough to live to know that it was a wonderful grapefruit. It was a Rio Red. And I think it was only like 4 years old, 3 years old, finally fruiting, but the fruit was terrible. It was really bitter. So I just hacked the hell out of it and thought, I'll just graft on something that's better. And that tree just came back like massively and gave me the best production that I've ever seen a tree do. Plus, it was really, really sweet. And I just couldn't give them away fast enough because there were so many. So sometimes when you think your pruning is going to harm a tree because it's like too much, especially with citrus, you'd be surprised how amazing they'll come back. And that's January. The other is I'm a stone fruit tree pruner. That's my specialty. And I prune in summer to kind of rein in some of that excessive growth. And I also prune in winter to basically set the scaffold of the tree. So, you know, the worst time to prune a stone fruit is in spring because they're about to send out their flowers and they're gorgeous. So you definitely want to prune at the right time if you have a stone fruit.
That's great. So just to define, a stone fruit would include your peaches, your nectarines, your almonds, your plums, your apricots, your cherries. Those are considered your stone fruits, right? Are there more that I can add to the list?
So it's anything with a pit or that really hard seed in the center, except I don't think avocados are stone fruits, so totally different.
So with your stone fruits, you said that you're basically pruning it through summer to basically, once you've harvested the fruit and you've got all this extra growth, you're bringing all of that growth in, and then also in the late winter, I guess, would be the other time to prune, to basically manage the scaffolding as you've said as well.
Yeah, so the summer pruning is to kind of dwarf the tree and rein it in, because a lot of people think, oh, I have to buy a dwarfing rootstock to get this tree to be really small. That's not true. You can get the right rootstock for your soil, and then you can hold it back size-wise just by pruning. And a lot of times people buy the wrong rootstock for a sandy soil. Yeah. And it doesn't matter that it was dwarf or not, that tree's never going to grow very much. So what I like to do is buy a rootstock that's going to respond to that soil properly, and then just by judicious pruning, get it to where it's the right size and shape for your spot.
That's great. My next question for you, question number 4, transplanting and sowing seeds to the lunar moon phases. So Judy and I had a conversation just yesterday, and this is the first time I've heard it, I'll admit it. She mentioned about planting your trees, planting your vegetables, sowing your seeds and everything, and doing so in line with the moon phase and the moon cycle. And I thought that was interesting, but I found at least a dozen articles that exist relating to planting with a moon phase, and I'm hoping you can maybe quickly at least introduce the idea. I know we can do an entire video on planting with the moon phases, but can you just introduce that concept of what it is and how does that make any sense?
Well, I plant to the moon cycles because I get better results. So I have to say, I've planted at the wrong time of the month, and sometimes the seeds die. They actually will rot. So planting by the moon cycle is more important than you think, and the farmers do it, and it's a long history of people who sow their own seeds doing it. So the reason you plant seeds that grow above ground at new moon is during the new moon you have this lunar pull, and actually that's when the water is the greatest in the soil, is when the lunar pull is great because it pulls it up to the surface. And those seed coats then can break with this extra water that's in the soil. Plus, if you think about it, when the moon is full, you get more light at night, and the plants actually photosynthesize at night. So you want that lunar pull to bring that seed coat open and then burst just when the moon is starting to get more and more full. And then it works the other way for the underground plants like beets, carrots, radishes, although radishes kind of blow the whole thing because you can plant radishes sometimes at the wrong time of the month and they'll still work because they're very fast growing. The thing about radishes and these other seeds is the other seeds, the carrots, the beets, and the turnips, they take a long time to germinate. And so what you're doing by planting them during the full moon is you're allowing them to take on water, and they need that to take on water for a long time before they burst. So it's really critical that you plant them at at full moon, so that you take advantage of the fact that there's more water in the soil both at new moon and at full moon, but also that it gives them a longer time before it's full again. That's when they burst. So the other thing is, when you transplant, you have to think about, when it's full moon, you get the full amount going to the leaves. But what you really want is during transplanting to focus everything on the roots. So you should transplant during new moon. And actually we take a lot of leaves off, and we'll give an example on another video about that with a tomato plant, but we take a lot of leaves off so that there's less energy being drawn to the leaves, and it's more focused on the roots.
So that should be hopefully our next video, is planting tomatoes, and a whole lesson on that. But let me see if I recap what you just said, and I'll admit again that yesterday didn't make sense, but just now it made sense. And let me share with you what I understand is, I understand that with the new moon and the full moon, it affects the tides in the ocean. Most of us should, hopefully have been taught that, whether it's in elementary school or high school, that the moon and the alignment with the sun can create certain pulls that create higher high tides and lower low tides. And it does make sense that would affect also the water in your soil as well, and that water table that pretty much underlies all of us. So and even with watering, I'm guessing with your sprinklers or however you water your garden, that moon, depending on the phase, is going to end up pulling that water a little higher to where those seeds and those trees are than, whether it's a new moon or a full moon, it's going to have a water level at a different level within your soil just based on that moon phase. So that kind of makes sense to me. For the first time, thank you for explaining. And let me see if I got this lesson right too, is you sow your seeds on a full moon, and you do
the long germinating seeds, the ones that are underground growing tubers. That's what you grow during full moon.
Okay.
Or seed.
And then transplant your plants during the new moon. Right,
but you also plant your short germinating seeds during new moon. So that's almost all of the seeds. It's easier to say it this way. Plant all your seeds during new moon, and just plant the root crops and flowers, which are long germinating seed, during the full moon.
That's awesome. I hope we can do an entire video just on moon phases, but maybe that'll be one of the things we get to do pretty soon. Let's get on to the next question. Question number 5. Is it too late to sow my veggie seeds? Here we are now at the end of March. Tomorrow is Easter Sunday. Is it too late now to sow my veggie seeds? And then what are the best time to sow my seeds for the garden?
So we live in Southern California, and we have a year-round growing season. And there's some veggies that you grow in the summer, like the obvious ones, because most people actually grow summer crops. They don't even know about the winter crops. But the short answer is you can grow seeds all year round. You could be succession planting. Every month plant another series of plants. And I actually have a planting schedule that if you email me, I'll send to you for free. It's just a PDF. And it tells you what month, you know, like we're in March or we're in April right now, we can plant this set of plants. And it even tells you in my planting schedule the best time to put in trees and things like that,
great.
and when to graft as well.
Interesting.
So the short answer is you can plant at any time, but the long answer is you have to know what to plant when. And that's why a planting schedule is really important.
Got it. So Judy's got a planting schedule that's available. With your planting schedule, is it specific to Southern California only, or is it something that applies from East Coast to West Coast?
It's so specific that I would say let's only use it in the LA area.
So this is an LA area specific planting schedule, and I will put Judy's email address here below for you to email Judy directly if you want to get your hands on that planting schedule, and at least you guys will be connected. And again, we're going to make this an LA specific planting schedule. So for those of you in the LA area, this will benefit you. And let's hop on to, and so the point with this question number 5 is when it comes to sowing seeds, being here we're in Los Angeles, that we can be planting every single month different varieties of seeds and enjoying the benefits of those plants pretty much year round.
That's right.
Number 6, why do nurseries sell tomatoes? And here we got these tomato plants that's coming up again. And you and I did talk about this yesterday, and it kind of bothers me to see that the nurseries are selling tomatoes here in Los Angeles, Southern California, probably San Diego, year round. And I've even met with some of these nursery owners, and they're like, yeah, tomatoes work year round, and we've got Southern California climate, it's warm year round, tomatoes grow year round. But I know in my experience that I love planting my tomatoes in the spring, and they grow very rapidly and they mature with fruit pretty quickly by late spring, and I'm enjoying, you know, a lot of tomatoes in summer and in fall. And then I notice that there's a sharp decline in the plant's health after we get those record high hot summers in August, September, and then by October, November, production is just a fraction of what it was late spring, summer, and fall. So why are these nurseries selling tomato plants in November, December, January, and February when it may not, in February might be okay, but in that November, December, January, most challenging months when it could still be warm, but we also get those freakishly cold days and cold fronts, and, you know, a week straight of rain, you know, that's just, you know, making that soil a little bit too wet and leading to diseases. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the short answer is people love tomatoes, they're going to buy them, okay? They don't always know that it's not the right time maybe for the best production of tomatoes. However, we don't know what they have at home. Maybe they have a greenhouse. Maybe they know to use row cover to prevent frost, so to speak, or cold nights from really stunting the growth. The other thing is they could put a container around them outside that has plastic or some kind of tenting that actually holds the heat in. So, you know, during the day that interior gets really hot, and at night it still keeps kind of cooking. So you can grow all year round if you know how to treat your tomatoes. But having said that, what I do to get a longer season of tomatoes is I plant the cherry tomatoes, because like Super Sweet 100, which is a wonderful little red. I love this one. Also, I love Sun Gold. These tomatoes they don't need a long period of heat. They don't need like 7 days in a row of hot temperatures. They can do with maybe 3 or 4 days in a row of hot. And you know how we get those spikes of heat in January?
Yeah.
So I've been able to have year-round tomatoes, and that's just because I'm planting the right varieties. But having said that, there's always the exception to the rule. There's always this freak tomato plant that will just take off even though it's not the time of year. They don't get the long daylight hours, but they're still doing okay. And one tomato plant I want to talk about like that, it was a volunteer, which means it just showed up in my garden one year. And it was so strong, but it was in the wrong place. It was growing out of my compost heap.
Oh,
it was
wow.
actually sticking out of the wall of the compost container. And I thought, this is such a beautiful tomato plant, but it's going into winter. I'm just going to forget about it. And then I thought, you know what? Tomato plants actually will send out roots from their stem. I'll just take this plant, break it up into pieces, and stick it into my raised beds.
Oh, wow.
And wouldn't you know, 1 out of like 5 of those things really took off like a rocket. This thing just, it basically became this enormous green thing that didn't have any tomatoes on it.
Uh-oh.
And I was really frustrated until at one point it was probably a summer it grew, and then in the winter I was like, this is never going to produce any tomatoes. But sure enough, it started to put out flowers maybe September or October, and I'm like, I'm just going to let it go. And it gave me tomatoes. Every time we'd have a spike of heat in the winter, it would start ripening them.
Wow.
So I had tomatoes all winter, and the unfortunate thing is I don't know what variety that was, but I'm guessing it was either a big beef or a rowdy red, Clint Eastwood rowdy red.
You said it basically grew as a seedling, right? Or do you think it
no,
came
it
out of
was
your
a
compost?
volunteer. It was a volunteer.
That's neat.
But yes, the answer is it was a seedling at
So
some point.
as a seedling, then it may have crossed with other varieties of tomatoes. That's my point. Like it could have
yes.
become something that we can
was
call
hybrid.
the Judy Frankel tomato that everybody
Right.
needs to get their hands on.
I don't know. Maybe I
Anyways.
should save some seeds.
No, it's neat. That's great. And great
But
story.
It wouldn't be true to the parent if it was a cross.
So
the seeds.
Yeah. So being in LA, and I've got a lot of family and friends in Orange County, and even down to San Diego, and we also work with clients as well that do enjoy tomatoes here in Southern California year-round, and I guess that's why we see them growing at the nurseries. But in my opinion, and this is your show, but I don't think you should be planting tomatoes in the winter when you can enjoy so much more growth and so much more health by planting them by maybe February or March if you want to start early, but March, April if you want to be safe from just having to deal with muddy soil and chances of higher disease, and also just not optimal weather for just creating that growth where you're going to get to see 1 to 2 feet of growth per week during the growing season compared to minimal growth during winter seasons with sporadic weather, which is the reason, in my opinion, I think you should wait till the growing season starts.
And I agree with that on the basis of 2 things. One is the temperature is more conducive to growing, but the other thing that we don't talk about and we really need to talk about is day length, because plants know when they have a longer day they're going to be able to produce and get to seed, and they really just pump, their juices are flowing. When it's winter time, you have these really short day lengths. That is anathema to growth, and that's why everything's supposed to sleep in the winter. Well, we have this skewed day length with temperatures not matching it, and I think it's because of global warming that we're actually having longer. It takes longer for it to get warm,
Yeah.
and so maybe we're bumping up against this day length not matching the temperature, and that's going to affect our ability to grow food. That's
an awesome point, is the consideration of the number of light hours in the day, and being that we just had spring about a week ago, that with spring we've got the equinox, which is equal days and equal nights, so about 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night, and shifting towards more light per day as we get towards summer, which is going to be the summer, what's it called?
Solstice?
Yeah.
Equinox?
No, it's not equinox. It would be the summer solstice. So the summer solstice is when you've got the maximum light hours for the entire year, which is about, if it's 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night for the equinox, then for summer it's something like 2 extra hours of light in the summer, and so 2 less hours of nighttime, and then compare that to the winter where you've got 2 extra hours of night at the expense of your daylight. So that would be another reason to shy away from doing much in the winter when your crop is going to be receiving that less amount of light in the winter months compared to spring, summer, and fall.
But I need to make a point on that because I grow winter crops. So that's cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, kale, Swiss chard, all the greens, so lettuce and spinach. Now, if you're doing that, you don't need to have like the temperature or the day length. But having said that, if you put these things in the shade, they won't do well. So you need that full day of the winter to grow. And that means you need full sun exposure. Wherever you're planting these plants, they need that every hour, every minute of the day to be in full sun.
That's great. I mean, you can never stop planting in Southern California. So question number 7, what is an organic gardener and why should gardeners be striving to accomplish with their home gardens? So again, the question is, what is an organic gardener and why should home gardeners be considering organic gardening techniques?
Okay, so I'm an activist actually in this area, and I'm trying to teach people that Roundup, the weed killer, is actually harming us because it's sprayed on most of our food. And so organic gardening stays away from Roundup, but I have to say that even organic farming in some cases isn't like the primo best way to grow because they're still using a lot of chemicals. So in our home gardens, we have more control. We can say, I don't want to use any toxic chemicals. I don't even want to use the ones that say they're organic because I know that those things are going to harm other, not just us, but the bees and whatever. So we're more careful at home just not to use harsh chemicals. And that's to me what organic means, because if you were to try to become an organic farmer, you have to go through the National Organic Program, NOP, and you have to be certified. You have to go through all this process of cleaning your soil. If you haven't had an organic farm, you have to make sure that the chemicals are at least 3 years old away. So there's an incredible process that an organic farm has to go through, and it's really a shame that they have to pay money to get back to the place where we were 45 years ago before we started introducing these toxic chemicals into agriculture.
That's a good point. I mean, let you and I talk for a second. Is an organic gardener supposed to be buying organic products from the store, or is the goal permaculture where they learn how to like do all of the organic gardening within the bounds of their own garden, like recycling what's there? What is an organic gardener? My idea of an organic gardener is when you plant something on your property, because there's so many people out there that don't grow their own food. Or they might have a backyard with no plants at all, or it might just be weeds. The fact that they installed a plant on their property, they've just improved the planet by having now something that's, a cleaning engine for the atmosphere, creating more oxygen. I should be recording this, but
yeah, but you are recording this.
Yeah, I know, but I feel like as you and I talking, and I don't know if I had my voice up enough to really have that capture. But anyways, let's see how it goes. But you're going to start off with what is so an organic gardener is, and let's see where it goes from there.
Okay. An organic gardener is someone who's conscious about every little input that they bring into their garden. So maybe, for example, instead of buying the bag of amendment that doesn't say organic on it, you buy the bag of amendment that says organic on it. That's key. You can even find plants now that say organically grown. That seedling was started in organic potting soil, and the seed itself is organic. In other words, it's not G.M.O.
That's great.
Genetically modified. So there are, at every level, choices, usually when you go to purchase something, that you have to decide whether you're purchasing something that's organic or organically certified. And even when you're choosing your organically certified things, you have to be careful, because some of the organically certified things are still somewhat toxic, and if they're not toxic to us, they could be toxic to the bees or somewhere in the food chain.
Marine life.
Or, here's a big one, I'm really against using fungicides unless absolutely necessary, because you're killing the mycorrhizal fungi in the soil, and the mycorrhiza are really key to bringing the nutrients to the plant. Well, if you're killing the fungi in the soil by spraying a fungi on the antifungal on the leaves, it's going to sink down into the soil at some point. Then those plants will never have the supercharged nature of what it's like to be working in symbiosis with these mycorrhizal fungi and bacteria in the soil. So it's another reason why you don't use Roundup anywhere near your plants, because they're actually killing the bacteria in the soil, the good bacteria.
So when it comes to the mycorrhizal fungus, for you that are watching this, and for those of you that don't understand, the mycorrhizal fungus and the mycorrhizal roots, the hyphae also known as, are the roots of these mushrooms. And we all know what mushrooms are. It's basically the toppings on your pizza. But imagine all those natural mushrooms that you have in your garden. Even if you don't see it, there's a network of fungus that's underlying and basically in symbiosis, basically a relationship between the fungus in your garden and all of the trees and plants and vegetables that you've got in your garden. And as much as, I don't know if it's 95 or 98% of the plants that are on this planet have a relationship with fungus. And so, as Judy just said, if you're using antifungal or what was the other word?
Microbial even.
Yeah, microbial, basically killers within your garden, then you're collapsing this integral relationship between the mycorrhizal fungus within your soil that is necessary for and critical in a nice, healthy, organic garden for maximizing and optimizing the health and the life of your trees and plants within your garden. So, I mean, great point with that.
And to touch on this, if you think about human beings, we take in food, and that improves our health and improves our immune system. Well, there are natural methods for treating aphids or leaf miners on your citrus trees, and they're made with like lemons, or they're made with neem oil. These natural methods do just as good of a job as these toxic chemicals, but you can't patent them. And that's why, if nobody can make money off of it, it makes perfect sense why you would have other things available in the store. So really, before you look at those options that are easily sold, why not see if there's some method that's probably a lot cheaper that you can use with natural means.
Along the same point, question number 8 that I have for you is, how do non-organic fertilizers work, and how are they harmful?
It's a loaded question. Okay, so the fertilizers generally have, and I'm talking about Miracle-Gro, the chemical fertilizers generally have a lot of salt in them, and you're building up salt. So maybe they'll at first give your plants a rush of nutrients, mostly nitrogen, will give your plants a lot of green growth. But what you're doing is you're basically setting the stage for killing all the good stuff in the soil, because once it gets too salty, then there's no way to wash that out. You could try, but it's really hard to get all that salt out of it. So you have to be careful that when you're using fertilizer, you're using something that's more natural. So for example, cottonseed meal, or from animal waste. And then what you'd really like to see is humic acids come in somehow in that process of breaking down things, composting. Humic acids is like the life of the soil, and so your fertilizer shouldn't interrupt that process. So if you're actually, Advancing Eco Agriculture, one of my favorite companies that sells to farmers, a new method of, or really the old method of growing things in the most sustainable way.
Yeah.
They say it's not really what you add to the soil so much as whether or not that soil is replete with all these microorganisms. So you really have to add, sometimes you have to do what's called inoculating the soil, and there are inoculants that you can buy now that will help a soil that maybe is slightly deficient in phosphorus. It will help those microorganisms that go after phosphorus and bring it up to the plant. It will actually foster that relationship and help that to happen. So actually now we're kind of steering away from just throwing nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium at the plants, and now we're actually giving them more well-rounded fertilizers with some of the micronutrients like the minerals that are missing in a lot of our food because it's mass
not
produced.
In the soil. Yeah.
It's not in the soil. And also the mycorrhiza and the bacteria that we were talking about earlier. Those are critical to bringing the nutrients to the plants from thither and yon, and giving them what they need, because actually there's a chemical and signaling relationship that's happening between the roots of the plant and these microorganisms. The plant is saying, I want this, and the microorganisms are saying, okay, I'll give it to you, but you have to give me some of your sugar. And that's exactly how it works. The plants take sugar from, they make sugar from photosynthesis.
For the soil biology, which includes the mycorrhizal fungus, it also includes the beneficial bacteria, and includes a variety of other microorganisms that live in the soil, relationship between the plant and the life that's within the soil. On the same question, so if I use a chemical fertilizer around my plants, is that chemical fertilizer feeding that soil biology?
Absolutely not. That's the key. I mean,
I just wanted to make that clear.
You can throw all the potassium you want into that soil, but if you don't have the micro life in that soil that needs to either break it down or make it available to the plant, then no go. And that's why a lot of times you'll say, oh, I bought all this fertilizer, oh, I threw all this stuff at it, but it's not giving it what it needs. And you've seen, you plant something and it languishes in this space. That's all a function of the soil. If the soil isn't teeming with these microorganisms, with life, it's not gonna work. No plant will ever work in that area. It's like planting in rocks, just plain rocks.
That's great.
Although if you plant in rocks and you introduce like a, I don't know if you've heard of the Fenthorn garden. Mm-hmm. It's in on the west coast of Ireland. Anyway, they took this place that was completely barren, and they the owners realized you have to have a little bit of like green and a little bit of brown. So they brought in brown from all the horse manure in the area, because people just couldn't give that away fast enough. And then they brought in seaweed from the sea. Wow. And they ended up turning this place into the most fantastic garden. People visit it from all over the world and actually work there for free to get to learn. So if you can turn that into an amazing garden, look, you don't need Miracle Grow.
Yeah. Well, with no, I don't want to say anything negative about Miracle Grow, but I know Miracle Grow also does have an organic line as well. So if you read the label, I know that they've got some bone meal and some blood meal I've seen on the shelves, and I know that they're starting to evolve because of the demand that home gardeners have created. So, but yeah, they do have some organics now. So read the labels, read the ingredients.
We don't want to support these companies that would sell Roundup, though.
True. It's the same company, right?
Yeah, it's the same company.
My question number 9. It's been 6 months since you and I met. It seems like longer, but it's only been 6 months since we met at the California Rare Fruit Growers meeting in Ranchos Palos Verdes, where I was a guest speaker at the, what was the name of that garden that we met at?
Oh, South Coast Botanic Gardens.
At the South Coast Botanic Gardens. And there I had the opportunity to talk about the Ivory Organics products, and I'm just curious as to how have you used the Ivory Organics products in your gardening practices?
Well, what's great about your products and why I recommend it to my clients is that, first of all, we have been using paint to protect a tree, especially on that south side. Whenever you plant a new tree, you have to be really careful that it doesn't get sun scald. And the sad thing is that we didn't really have anything that I felt really comfortable recommending. So now I feel like this is a product that not only is not harmful, but is beneficial to the plant and has added benefits of not being tasty to the animals and giving it a little boost against other pests as well. And so I've actually recommended to people who, especially who plant avocado trees and in the stone fruit trees when they're young and they're still kind of tender, you definitely want to plant around the tree and really get a good coat on it. So what I love about it is that it's organic and it's not only not harmful but beneficial to the tree to put this product on it, which is I just have a lot of confidence in it.
That's great. Thank you so much. With the last question, question 10, open-ended question. Share any other garden topics that are important to you and what our viewers should be aware of. I know you're on the edge of a lot of political and gardening topics, and you've been on, you've been featured in the LA Times. You've got your book that you published, and you've got so many concepts that are unique to pretty much any other gardener that I've met. And if you've got 1, 2, or 3 ideas you think our gardeners should be aware of, and at least if you want to plant some seeds in their minds, what would you like to share with us?
Okay, so I feel like my whole life's purpose, like you reach this point in your life where you have to either realize who you are and have to do that thing, or you're just your soul's gonna die. So I just decided, okay, I'm gonna go all the way with this. My purpose in life is to spread the information that conventional agriculture is causing, you know, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, ALS, and autism in our children because we're using the number one chemical we're using, which is glyphosate, which is found in Roundup, is in all of our food that's not labeled USDA organic. And so what I do is when I give a talk about gardening, I also say, hey, if you're growing food at home, you can avoid these chemicals that are really harming our health. And if we can, you know, kind of raise the bar of consciousness, maybe we can ban these things in the conventional agriculture paradigm as well.
That's great. You make a good point too. I think you said 45 years ago, but I don't know how long it's been, but I know it hasn't been too long ago that growers were doing the right thing, growing things organically, using organic methods, not using GMO or genetically modified seeds and plants, and basically playing with our food. And when I say genetically modified, I know like one concept that comes to mind is where they're taking genetics from a plant and combining that with that of an insect to get the benefits of that insect within the plant. And they're doing things that would never, ever, ever happen naturally in the natural world. There is genetic modification in the sense of cross-pollinating one tomato plant with another, or cross-pollinating, you know, a peach with a plum.
That's completely different from what's going on in the labs, where they're actually shooting genes into the genome of the plant, and it's not supposed to happen that way. And actually, you know, if you want to read a good book on that, Altered Genes, Twisted Truth is the quintessential book, and Monsanto hasn't argued at every point in it that it's wrong. In fact, they won't even touch it because it's right. And they're saying that even the FDA knew that we were like not sure, that we couldn't be absolutely positively sure that the proteins that were created in these new modified plants would be okay to put out into the environment and for us to eat. So there is no proof that GMOs are safe to eat to this day.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you so much, Judy. And if you want to get in touch with Judy and to continue learning more about her expertise, and specifically if you're in the Los Angeles area, she does service gardens.
In the South Bay, LA.
So South Bay, Los Angeles.
I've gone as far north as Malibu.
Malibu. I'm going to put all of her contact information here. I'm also going to put it in the comments down below, and I'm also going to direct you to her website where you can learn more about how to access her books, how to get, read her Los Angeles Times article where she was featured talking about tomato plants, and just so much more. She's such an awesome lady, and so privileged to have this opportunity, and thank you so much, Judy.
Thank you.
So if you've enjoyed this educational moment by Ivory Organics, be sure to like it, and most importantly, by subscribing below, you'll be connected to this and all of our other educational gardening videos. This here is going to be our part 1 to at least another 2 or 3 educational videos featuring Judy and Judy's homegrown, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks again for watching, and happy gardening.